All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Live from the Tracking Room podcast. I am your host, David Chasteen. I just got done with episode 2. It was a good one. I felt like I got a little long-winded. I started talking about, I'm sick right now, man. I got a bad fever, but I'm missing out on some Theo shows tonight, and I missed out on them yesterday. I got to see him Thursday, so that's all right. But I'm bummed out, dude, depressed. Theo definitely one of my favorites right now, and I want to be there to see it, but I feel like total shit. I don't want to get any of my people sick over there, but yeah, man, I just this episode I kind of talked about Aziz Ansari just came through Nashville. I talked a little bit about that. Nothing like too in depth about some bullshit. Just really just about the shows and comedy. Talked a little bit about comedy etiquette and being in clubs. We talked about No Country for Old Men book and movie, some shit I've been into lately, and really that was about it, guys. I got into some long topics, but I feel like it's an alright one. If you like it, let me know. If you don't, let me know what you'd like to hear me talking about, or if you just want to shit on me, we can make that happen. So just alright, y'all, enjoy the episode. I'm David Chasteen. Thanks.
Dropping names like a coin pop lock machine. Running down the aisle like to drink your gasoline. I'm getting tired, skip a hotel and sleep. My impossible sleeper.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Live from the Tracking Room. This is a special fever edition, because I'm sick as fuck right now. Yeah, I've had this horrible fever the past couple days. I don't know what the fuck's up with that, but fuck it, dude, whatever. I'm sitting here doing nothing, smoking a little weed, try to forget about this, but yeah, man. Theo in town in Nashville this weekend. I got to see him on Thursday night. I missed his shows last night. Hopefully I can catch him tonight. I've got a little bit of time to see what I'm dealing with. But yeah, man, great weekend. Pretty crazy week overall, comedy in Nashville, man. We had Aziz Ansari this week. He did 10 sold-out shows. I got to see 9 of them, which was pretty sweet. Great dude, man. Aziz Ansari coming in hot, I guess, on this one, on the Fever edition. But Aziz in the news, obviously, the last time he was in the news, I feel like we all know what was up. I don't really feel like I should need to talk about it. But man, I don't know. I really don't want to talk about that at all. All I really want to say is Aziz came in, dude, as a comedian and threw down. Unbelievable, professional. One of the shows, I think it was either the second or third day of shows. During the first show, we had a power outage on the entire block. And dude just regrouped, got everybody quiet, and then obviously you're in a comedy club, no light, it's totally pitch black. Got super hot in there, but he did about 50 more minutes. He did his entire hour, no power in the room at all, which was pretty impressive. And he's still really funny, man. Yeah, just an unbelievable set, dude. The dude's a natural comedian, knows how to go in and just work the room. He had great bits. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his other stand-up stuff, but he's obviously, like, gone through some maturity. I won't talk about any of the bits because, obviously, that's not cool. He'll be I'm assuming he's doing a special with this because it was really good. If you got a chance to see him, if you see him in a city near you or something, definitely buy a ticket. Go out and see him. Don't get caught up in all this fucking bullshit that people are talking about. Just whatever, dude. Just, you know what happened. If you don't know what happened, look it up. I don't want to talk about it. The dude, it was interesting, though, to see him operate. That was the cool thing for me, because I didn't get to be around him very much or see what he was doing or really talk to him very much. But you could really see we see celebrities in there all the time, comedians all the time. So, like, he definitely dictated himself in a very different way than other comedians. Just like with his privacy and just, he talks about it in he's talked about it publicly and in his act a little bit, but the dude doesn't do social media or a phone. Like, he doesn't have shit on his phone. He doesn't have, like, internet. He doesn't have anything. He's got, like, GPS and, like, text messaging and phone calls. Like, that's it. He doesn't have anything on his phone. So, dude has really, like, unplugged himself. And it's got to be, you know, what he went through not that long ago. It's got to be real stressful as a human being to go through that, you know? You just went through, like, the highest of highs with your TV show and winning awards and everybody loves you. And, I mean, the other thing is, dude, he sold out 10 shows. Fuck you, you know? Like, obviously people still love him, you know? And whatever, if you want to... I'll be honest about this. I listened back to the first episode of the podcast, and some of the things I said when I listened back, I was like, oh, if you don't know me, you might take some of that the wrong way because, like, obviously you don't have my entire context of thought when you hear what I think about it. And I don't want to talk about the fucking controversy, because the one thing that pissed me off about all this is Aziz did these shows and the power went out in that one show, and he, you know, any other club in the world and a lot of performers probably would have just called it, you know. They'd have been like, well, I don't know what to do, let's get everybody out of here, it's unsafe or something, or they just maybe felt uncomfortable. But he did it, you know. He sold those tickets and he wanted to do the show for those people. You could tell. And people were happy to see him. See, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. I don't know, man. It's just... Oh, that's what I'm trying to say. He came in and he worked his ass off and he did the show for those people. And... people wrote articles about it, obviously. You know, the story got out, and I saw an article in... The first one was in the Tennessean, and the next one I saw was in the New York Post, or the New Yorker, one of the two. And then I saw one on CNN and one on another major news site a couple days later. And they cover the power outage and the shows for, like, less than half the article. And it's all already a shorter... And also... Everybody ripped the Tennessean. The Tennessean wrote the original article, and this is like, people talk about the news nowadays, right? And that you can't really trust the news in which you read the news, and I don't want to play into that, because the connotation of being like that you don't trust the news is that you like Donald Trump or something. But it's just that the way the article was written, everyone ripped off the article from the Tennessean, and no one, obviously, that wrote any of these articles did their own research and actually cared about reporting the story. They just understood that this was content about Aziz Ansari, that you could get clicks, and that turns into money for them. Like, that's obviously the only reason they wrote the article, because if you read any of them, they're just like, comedian Aziz Ansari attempted to make his comeback after his Me Too accusations is like the title of the article, not in the Tennessean. The Tennessean was a good article and respectful. Like, I did like that one. It was the best one out of all of them, as a local article. But all the other ones were like, Aziz is not the only comedian attempting to make his comeback. That he follows a comeback just after the Louis C.K. attempts to make his comeback, which is just like, that's why I don't even want to talk about what happened, is because I feel like people can't help, but no one can start a new conversation. No one can start over with a new thought anymore. It's just like, oh, this guy did this, and now this guy kind of did the same thing, and the news stories are linked up. They're totally unrelated. The dudes are, I guess they're actually friends, and I think CK is a huge influence for Aziz as a comedian, which he is to a lot of people, which has nothing to do with the situation. But also... Another thing, getting back to the article not being well written or well researched at all, Aziz isn't following the CK comeback, and it's completely different. Louis CK a couple weeks ago did a pop-up spot in the Comedy Cellar in New York, and no one knew he was coming. Aziz announced a tour, and in CNN, like the major articles, what really killed me was that it said Aziz Ansari performed a stand-up set Monday night in Nashville. So no, he didn't perform a stand-up set. He performed 10 stand-up sets over 4 days, completely sold-out shows. And then the day before the Nashville shows, or no, it was the same day of the first Nashville show, he did a sold-out theater in Chattanooga. And then the day before that, he did a sold-out theater in Knoxville. And the day before that, he did a different sold-out theater in Knoxville. And then a couple days before that, he did a sold-out theater in South Carolina, where he's from. And then he's been doing shows in Wisconsin at clubs that I read about. So, like, the way that I really was looking forward to this for Aziz, because I was like, oh, this is going to be great positive light. I mean, he didn't post on his Instagram for over a year, I think it was. In 2017, I think he posted about being on the cover of GQ. It was the last thing he posted on his Instagram. And then he posted about the Nashville Power Outage shows, and that we added shows and rescheduled shows so the fans could see it, which I thought was really cool. But it received like almost no positive attention outside of that Tennessean article, which I think is really unfortunate and dishonest, really, because if you get on Twitter and search Aziz and you scroll through the latest tweets, it's like everybody's like, oh my God, a great show, we love that you're back, or like, oh, I see that you're back and we want to see you, where's Master of None Season 3, or people being like, oh yeah, we missed out on the show and they had to cancel and reschedule, but we got to go anyway, and we're so glad we ended up getting to go. I mean, it's almost no negative. I don't think there were any negative, and I read like an unbelievable amount of comments and every article I could find. Just like no negative feedback from people that were actually involved, that were there or bought tickets or anything like that. I mean, everybody loved it, So when an article comes out in CNN and they just say that he did a stand-up set on Monday night, power went out, and he powered through, and it's prefaced and ended with stuff about a Me Too accusation, I just think it's like, I mean, what are you doing, Like, why are you writing that article? I just know, like, I love credible writing. When I was in high school, I took English, like, everybody took English class, but I really loved my English classes. I took English with a bunch of great teachers, and they taught me about credibility in writing and what it means to be a credible journalist and to maintain objectivity so that you can have credibility and reach your audience and relay the truth, pretty much objective truth, and you're not affecting or causing any bias in your writing. You're just you're just relaying as much information as you can. And it's just weird that like actual media and journalism, at least today, totally does not respect that at all. It's just bullshit. It's whatever is going to be clickbaity and get them more views, and which turns into advertising dollars, which means that news in the mainstream in the country is not news. It's not journalism. It's entertainment, and that's what it's meant to be. If you look at like, and I really don't want to get into this because we talked about it a lot on the last podcast, but just again, the hysteria the news likes to create, it turns into advertising money for them, man. And it's I think it's really unfair to the public who isn't set up to have an opinion, an accurate opinion, because they don't have the information. Like, I was there and I saw all the shows, Other people were not there. Other people have never seen him in person or seen a show, or they just know him from, maybe they barely have even watched a thing he's in. They haven't seen Master of None, haven't seen Parks and Rec. They just know about that he's a famous guy and he's worth $20 billion and he's got, this news story hanging over his head right now. But I just thought it was really unfortunate and a missed opportunity for him to kind of get a little comeback on people and be like, look at, came out, he cared about the fans, he did the shows. And I just wish they would have covered that a little better in the news. I wish they would have covered like the actual details of the story accurately. I wish, somebody would have done their research at CNN before reading half of an article and then just regurgitating a bunch of stuff about another guy that in relation to because that's what people, I guess, want to hear about. That's what they think is going to get more clicks, and that's what I just don't need to read. If you're going to write an article about Aziz Ansari doing a show with the power outage, I don't want to read half the article about regurgitated old news stories about some other stuff that we all already know about. That if you just said Aziz Ansari, that's the stuff I would think about anyway. And I think it just goes more to, if you haven't seen his act, you got to go see it. I mean, he doesn't really acknowledge that shit and talk about it, but he does talk about a bunch of interesting stuff. It's good social commentary and stand-up just mixed with good stand-up where you're not thinking about, it's not too political. I don't like a lot of political stand-up at all. But it's just the right mix, man. I think he did really well, and I just wouldn't say that about, anybody. So, that being said, Aziz Ansari killed the shows. I can't wait to see him again sometime. Hopefully the dude is coming back strong and people just give him a fucking chance, because man, fuck you. If you just want to keep that shit going and that's all you want to talk about in correlation to his name, fuck you, dude. Because if that was anybody, and you shouldn't do that to anybody, no matter who they are. You shouldn't put people out. and again, out of context, the intent of me saying that, maybe you disagree, and I don't want to get into talking about all that, but man, it's just a unique situation, and the technology gives the option if you're a high-profile individual and people want to hear about you, you can pretty much come out and say something, and then it'll just take off, and then that's your reputation now, and that's kind of sad. Not overall. It's good that it can happen sometimes, but sometimes it's not. And hopefully, man, Aziz makes the comeback. He already is, man. Selling. And it's not, again, not like the CK thing at all. CK just showed up at the club. They put him on stage for a spot. I mean, I don't think he did an hour. I think he did a short amount of like 15 minutes or something. And nobody knew he was coming. Nobody in the crowd knew he was going to be there. I mean, Aziz publicized it and put the tickets for sale, and he didn't even advertise the shows, really. He just put them out, and he sold out, 4 theater shows and 10 comedy club shows. And then I think the Wisconsin spots were pop-ups and stuff. But, like, people knew they were coming to see him, and they spent good money. Like, they weren't super cheap tickets. They're about twice as much as a normal comedy club ticket. So, that being said, man, if you're all butthurt about that, maybe just go work hard at what you want to do and start trying to be successful, because there's really no reason to get mad at somebody else unless, I don't know. You got your own opinion. That's fine. What else, though? Theo Von. Yeah, Theo Von here. I saw him on Thursday. I love Theo Von. Theo Von is one of my favorite stand-ups right now. I love his podcast. He's part of that, like, Joe Rogan and the Fighter and the Kid crew of people that are just, like, like Joey Diaz, that are just, I don't know, they're cool personalities, they're cool people, and they are funny stand-ups. They're hard workers. I don't know, they're the kind of people that naturally I look up to as role models, so to see Theo and meet him, I got a picture with him, I got to talk to him a little bit, was really cool. Hopefully I can get over the bullshit fever and get out there and see him again tonight before, he's gone. But, I don't know, man, comedy is just so fun right now. I don't know, in life, there's a lot of bullshit going on with just the world around you. But comedy, I'm so thankful to be around comedy right now. I wouldn't really rather be around anything else. Everything's just filled with, the space to think about your own thing is just filled up so much. And in comedy, you kind of get that relief. You just step into a comedy club and you're just in this room. You don't see the daylight and the time of day changing. You're just in there and the show's happening, and then you get to hang out for a little bit and you go home. I like that lifestyle. A lot of people might think that sounds like, well, you lock yourself in a box and then you leave late at night. Like, I don't know. I like it. I like being around comedy. It's just nice to laugh, and it's nice to feel. Comedy is free, no matter what people are saying about it. I know, especially on the topic of the beginning of the podcast, like, a lot of people that don't know shit about comedy are giving a lot of opinion about comedians right now. Especially they talk about, like, the subject matter that maybe comedians should talk about. I know that Nanette thing was really big recently, and also even that, people kind of sensationalized what she was saying. I forget her name off the top of my head, that Nanette special, though. I know she's British. I watched quite a bit of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but a lot of people came out and said that she was saying that people shouldn't do stand-up anymore, that stand-up is just dark and it's racist and it's homophobic and it's just not healthy and it's not good for things, and that people should stop doing it, that stand-up should kind of die in its form now. But that's actually not what she said. That's just kind of how it got brought out in the story. She really was just talking about herself. She was talking about that she doesn't want to do comedy anymore, because for her, the basis of it, for writing and all that stuff, the way you poke fun at things to be successful, and she's talking about it in relation to herself, is that it just doesn't feel right to her, that, like, the way that you would go about it just doesn't feel right. But then also, she wasn't at, like, the top of her game until she filmed this special and released it, and now it's blown up. And if you go watch some interviews, they'll ask her, she was like, well, you were talking about doing, you were going to stop doing stand-up or whatever, and now she's like, I'm not saying she's backpedaling, because that would be, like, rude to say, but now she's like, she's honest about it. She's like, well, honestly, I wasn't at the peak of my stand-up. I felt like I've been doing it for a long time and really to no avail. I wasn't gaining a lot of success. She'd been a stand-up comedian, I think, for over 10 years and just didn't gain really any mainstream success. And maybe that played into the part of the frustration and why she was sick of comedy and why she kind of had a bad taste in her mouth with writing jokes. I mean, you see that with, like, you know, the Chappelle Show. Why Dave Chappelle left that is because the writing of the sketches just got super dark and it wasn't incredibly funny anymore, and also was weighing heavily on him mentally. So for her, it's understandable that, like, maybe what she's going through and what she sees in the world right now, and I know she is lesbian, that for her identity it's hard to participate in that or something, especially with the added frustration and not really succeeding to her standards in comedy. But now that she has, and that she has a lot of success and people will definitely come see her shows all around the world now, she's totally going to keep doing comedy shows. And it's just weird that that's something that came out and was like a big part of like the conversation of the dynamic of comedy right now. Like, what is comedy doing? Can you say whatever you want? And fuck yeah, you can say whatever you want to say. I see comedy shows almost every day of the week, multiple times a day, and you say whatever the fuck you want to say. If it bombs, it bombs, and maybe you won't do it again. Maybe you work on it. But I have seen a lot of people, like I saw Corey Holcomb. A lot of you might know Corey Holcomb from like Wild 'N Out, or he was on Black Jesus, a really good show on Adult Swim. But Corey Holcomb was hilarious, and he did an entire hour on side bitches. His entire hour was completely about just side bitches. Well, like his just different opinions and different bits on side bitches, and it was fucking hilarious. It's one of the funniest hours, and I saw that show probably 6 times, and it was crazy. And people, I mean, there were old white people in there, there were old African American people in there, there were young people in there, there were interracial couples in there. I mean, all different types of like how that comedy could offend different groups of people, like the different, what would you call them, demographics. They were all kind of represented at the shows, and people were in there losing their minds, you know. So I mean, there's definitely if you're out there and you're thinking that maybe there's no market for like offensive, maybe it can't just be offensive to be offensive now. Maybe it can't be just shocking to be shocking in a horrible, you know, you're just saying these like trigger words or whatever, which I even hate that phrase. But that I don't think can work anymore, because everybody will recognize that as I mean, I just think that's below the evolution of comedy anyway, but right now especially, it's just like people will be like, I mean, even if they were the people that would have laughed at it before, they probably won't. You can say whatever you want to say. I just think you have to bring perspective to it. It's got to be somehow relatable, no matter how ridiculous. You could pretty much say anything. You just got to make it work somehow. I mean, I saw Joey Diaz. You know, Joey Diaz say crazy shit on stage, and people, I mean, killing harder than anybody I've ever seen. Who else came through there recently that had some, let's see. I don't know. But comedy, it's not like that. It's not dying. Totally. I mean, comedy is at a super high point. It's only getting higher. And I feel like that's what's going to bring it back around, is people going to shows, going to comedy shows, not living life on the internet and taking advice from like what the internet tells you can be humorous or what you're allowed to laugh at or what people are allowed to say. I mean, some of those people that get quoted in these op-eds, and they obviously don't know fucking anything about comedy. You know, like I've read the article about CK's comeback at the Comedy Cellar, and this woman, one of the women that they had from the audience that talked about it, she said that it was obvious that, and I'm paraphrasing, but it felt obvious that their voices were not able to be heard or something like that. She was saying that, like, if they wanted to speak out or they wanted to say something or they wanted to heckle the comedian, that it obviously would not have been okay, and they felt like that there was like something put on that, like the vibe of the audience was a lot. They said it was a lot of white males at the Comedy Cellar or whatever in New York, but that people were clapping and cheering for him when he came on stage and when he went off stage and saying, "Oh, it's good to have you back, Louis," and stuff. But I mean, if you think you can go to a comedy club and heckle anybody, I mean, I don't care if Bill Cosby goes to a comedy club. Don't go in there and heckle him. I mean, don't buy his tickets, and the club don't book him, obviously, like, because that dude's a fucking serial rapist. But if somebody puts Louis on a stage, don't buy the tickets and don't give him money. Maybe stand outside and protest if you want to, but you don't go into any show and fucking disrupt the show. There are people in there that, and again, the intent of this, if you don't get comedy, you don't get the etiquette of comedy, you don't get the comedy world, I can understand how you wouldn't understand that. But, like, it's not, I mean, even, like, at the movies or something like that, if you don't fucking buy a movie for a ticket, or buy a ticket for a movie, and then go into the movie and disrupt the viewing experience for all the people in there that paid their money. Because, you know what, you also paid money, and at the end of the day, you're feeding into them getting money too. If you bought any concessions, any of that, that's like going to play into people getting paid, you know? Like, and at a comedy club, if you're buying tickets to go in the door, all that money probably is going to the comedian straight up from your tickets. So, I mean, if you think that that's the proper avenue and the thing to do is to go into some comic show and disrupt it and fuck up the flow and fuck up the energy of the room, because, again, if you don't get comedy, you probably won't understand. But it's not about that guy. It's not about Louis C.K. and you're going in there and fucking up his time. It's like there's an entire staff of servers, there are bartenders, there's a kitchen staff, there's a sound guy, there's an MC and a feature comedian, or say it's like a showcase, like probably what was going on at the Cellar. I mean, you might have 10, 15, 20, 40 comedians going on in that night, and they might be playing to pretty much that same crowd more or less as they're filtering in and out. I've never been to the Comedy Cellar, so I don't really know what their shows are like. But, I mean, you're going to go in there and fuck up the whole set. You're going to fuck up the sets after. You're going to make some comedian have to fucking pull off some save for the energy in the room. And then people are going to be thinking about that all night. Whereas you could have just, if you feel uncomfortable, just fucking don't be there. Just leave. If you didn't want to be there, just... It's about being an adult, really, at the end of the day. It's not about sexual assault. That's not the avenue to handle your personal emotions about a news story you read about during somebody's stand-up set. It's just ridiculous that, like, in this article, I can't remember what source, like what outlet wrote that article about. It might have been Variety or I can't remember who wrote it. But the way that the author of the article, they didn't encourage the public to be able to know about the etiquette of comedy. A lot of people haven't been in comedy clubs, so a lot of people don't get it. A lot of people haven't even seen stand-up in theaters, which is even, in a bigger venue, it's even weirder to try to control the audience, you know, and let them know how to behave in the proper way. But in a club, it's like you really have to submit to the etiquette of the show. And even if one person doesn't, it can fuck up the entire thing. So that's a responsibility. I have a responsibility to do that if you're going to buy a ticket and go into a club. And the article that I read just didn't represent that at all. The way they made it sound is like that this woman, or they might have talked to two different women that were separate in there. They said they like felt trapped and they had no control, and that they wouldn't have had a chance to. Well, it's not your choice. You're at a club, you know. Like if the owner of the Comedy Cellar or the booking person from the Comedy Cellar wants to put a comic on the stage, you definitely have the ability to stand up and walk out of the room. And then maybe if you haven't paid your tab yet, you go to the lobby and pay your tab in the lobby and not walk out on your check. But you don't have the option to, like, who are you? You know, are you the king of the... I mean, obviously, if you read the article with the context of knowing what a comedy club is like, it's obvious that the crowd was like... It might be similar to the Aziz thing, you know, where it's like they were surprised by him showing up, but they were like, oh my God, it's a comedy great. We know this guy is a good stand-up, and they were just maybe excited to see a stand-up. And I don't know, that's a different thing for me than the Aziz thing. I don't know if I'd enjoy a Louis C.K. stand-up show anytime soon, honestly, because he was one of my biggest heroes in stand-up, for sure. I don't know if there's anybody before what happened that made me laugh more than Louis C.K. I mean, and of course, it still happened, you know. But man, I've spent so much time watching stand-up clips on YouTube of his and his specials over and over and over. They're just like, you know, other than Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K. was probably my favorite comedian until recently. And that's really only because so much of his humor is based around, like, I guess the darkness of his personal life that maybe caused him to do those things. Like, I don't think he has any specials where he's not talking about jerking off for at least some portion of the show. You know, like, there's some chunk and some bit in the show where he talks about jerking off, probably multiple times. And his thing was a little more real, you know? So it did leave a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth where it's affected me a little. You know, I can't enjoy it the same. I don't find myself looking it up and looking at it to be like, oh, look at this guy. And that's, to be honest, I feel really bad about that. For some reason. I don't know why. That I'm not able to maybe just respect the body of work that exists, even though... But that being said, if I saw Louis, I don't know how I'd react. If he did a pop-in spot, I probably would clap and cheer and be excited. And he's a professional, and he'd probably pull it off. He'd probably still make me laugh, you know, because he's been doing this forever. But it sounds like the crowd at the Comedy Cellar really was overwhelmingly happy that he showed up. They were cheering and excited, and they really enjoyed the set. So from reading the article, I can tell that it was misrepresented. I can just tell, because that's not, like, the darkness and the haze of the tone that the people had that were interviewed for the article. I was just like, that's not how, what you're describing, that's not how it happened. You know, I can just tell. And maybe that's how they felt. Or the other thing is that with this Aziz thing, right? Like, the Tennessean wrote an article about the power outage show. I feel like before it was even over. I mean, it was like, we had 3 shows that night, and we obviously had to cancel the second 2, and we'd reschedule them. But before it would have been the midway point of the second show, that article was already published with pictures online, and I read it, and they had quoted somebody that worked at the club, and they had talked to 2 different fans that were in the audience. So if people want to get content, they're going to do it. They're going to find somebody that was there. They're going to find somebody that wants to talk about it. Also, they're going to find somebody that gives them the stuff that they want to report on, you know? Like, if they want to write, like the Aziz thing, half the articles are about a Me Too accusation. And why? I mean, do we need another article about that? Why don't you just write an article about him doing the sold-out shows and doing a show through a power outage in a dark comedy club, you know, with no lights and no PA? Like, why? I understand why they would write the article like that with Louis, but I'm just saying that's who they suck. Like, they sook out to find. They sook them out. Is that the right word, I guess? The women themselves said that it was a large audience of white males, is what the article said. And that obviously means they could have found a lot of people to talk to, but they didn't want to get the white male perspective of people in the audience. They found a female perspective in the audience, and that's what the 2 perspectives they wanted to give in the article. It was that. So it was written as an article. I don't know if it was a label as an opinion piece or something like that, but I really don't give a shit about the Louis. I don't care about defending it or whatever. I just don't care. I just think that to write an article irresponsibly about, like, what it's like to be in a comedy club and what it's like to be there for a show for anybody. I mean, if somebody reads that, or I got to deal with people heckling in a comedy club all the time, you know, and people just don't understand because of certain things they've heard, or they're just uneducated about the etiquette of a comedy show. They think they can yell out, or they'll just walk up to the stage. They'll start asking questions to the comedian in the middle of a bit, in the middle of their hour. They'll be talking loud as fuck to each other at their table and making jokes and laughing loud and having conversation through the jokes in the club. It's just like, some people are ignorant when it comes to things like that, you know. The least of which is, like, I mean, people getting interviewed in the news. But I just, reading that stuff, if you know anything about being at any of these shows, maybe if you were at the show, like, actually at these shows, because I was at those Aziz shows. I wasn't at the CK show. But reading it, I know that they were just girls in there that weren't going to have fun seeing Louis C.K., being surprised by it. Maybe they weren't used to being in a comedy club. They would know that you're not allowed to heckle if they knew anything about being in a comedy club, that it was just shocking to them. They're probably not fans of C.K. at all beforehand. They probably weren't familiar with any of his work or anything. They just probably really know about him from this. And And that's all. And it's just a shame, again, that the media doesn't take responsibility to educate people. Like, I'm not saying you have to write in the article that you're not supposed to heckle comedians, but you can at least talk about it. Like, well, and maybe the problem with the article is that the person that wrote it, maybe they don't know shit about comedy clubs either. Maybe they're just somebody from fucking New York Times or something that wants to, they got the sources and they're going to write the article and it's going to get a lot of traction and views and clicks for the company and reads, and that's what they're concerned about, is kind of finding that breakthrough story and, you know, boosting themselves up a little bit. But again, that's just like, I love journalism and quality journalism, and when people go out of their way to remain objective and to just give you the truth as they know it. And even the thing that I look for mainly in arguments and articles, any kind of writing, when anybody's talking about something that they're trying to talk to you about their point of view, they're trying to put something onto you, is do they concede and refute? If you don't know what that means, it's like, I learned it in high school in these English classes, and it's like a technique for remaining objective is you see the counterpoints that somebody might have for your argument, and you concede to those points, but then you refute the points. So you would say, like, you know, Lucy Kay was in this club, and I don't know. See, I don't want to like rewrite the article and give recommendations, but all I'm saying is, if you're being really objective, you'll look like you're considering the options. You're not going to be speaking on 100% polarized angle of something. You're gonna say, well, I get that, and that's fine, and I can understand how you think that, but this is why I think what I think, and you would do that multiple times to different counterpoints in your argument, and that's how you write a credible, article. Like, because the whole purpose of writing, there's a purpose in writing anything. That's the other thing, people don't think about writing. People don't think about why. It's not that this shit is just coming out of the sky. They're doing it for a reason. It's not that sometimes the main reason in journalism would be to relay information. There are things going on in the world, and this is news, and we should report the truth to people and let them know. And in America, that's a thing that we like. That's a part of our history. I mean, it's at the beginning of our Constitution is journalism and free speech and all that shit. So, I mean, it's something that makes us who we are. But also, it's really evolved. People have seen the market. This is going back into news really being entertainment now. And its goal is to make money, not to educate. People will write whatever is going to get the attention. And I just wish that there was an outlet, like, in the mainstream, anywhere. Like, the BBC is like the only news network that has television, and they write articles, and they have websites and all this shit, like publications, that they pretty much remain decently objective throughout the whole thing. They're still more progressive, but they're more moderate, because they just report the news. But these other, especially in America, we're capitalists, here in America, and we take that real seriously too. It's that when somebody starts making more money, the most money, everybody's going to copy their business model that's close to the top, because they're going to try to outcompete them. I mean, this isn't something that you see so much anymore, but I remember when I was a kid that they used to talk about local and national news, like when it would be Emmy season or Golden Globe season or whatever, you win trophies and shit for local news, or you know what I'm talking about, like TV fucking award shows and shit. People would try to push they would campaign for that stuff, because somehow that turned into marketing. Like, if this network or this person or this, if they won that, people would take it more seriously. That turned into more ratings for them. That turned into more money. But now it's like the most clickbaity, attractive headlines that are really irresponsible headlines. And it's just a shame, because coming up in high school and learning about objective journalism is something I really love, and I respect those concepts, and it's something I try to dictate my life with, just speaking to other people. And the fact that the people that like journalists that should be doing it, maybe they went to school, there's no way they don't know about it. Like, there's no journalist that works in journalism that fucking went to school and doesn't know about logos and pathos and ethos. There's none of them. There's no way. So it's crazy that they have to go and learn all these techniques and how to be a credible journalist, and now they're like writing an article about the Kardashians' asses, and they're getting the filler taken out of their faces and shit. Like, and that's their job. That's the article they have, or they got to go work at some column and write about shoes twice a week for 5 years before they can move up to the clothing section, and then maybe they get to write about the city or something. You know what I'm saying? It's just a weird. I bet journalism is a weird world to want to be in that world, and then if you don't have strong motivation, or maybe you didn't land like a great internship somewhere that's going to help you get a job, you've got to kind of sacrifice your integrity as a journalist to do work now, because you just have to do things the way they want to be done. Also, the other thing is that people don't know about editors. Like, people just don't know about the game of journalism, like, people will write these articles, and then they get turned over to an editor, and then the editor will change the headline and make that, like, that's a lot of it where I think it comes from, is when it goes to an editor, the company will hire the editor and have him change it, because they want it to be that clickbaity headline. And then they'll change the contents of the article, and maybe they'll do that thing where they put the ... in the middle of quotes, and they'll put words in parentheses. They're like, oh, this is the word that they meant to say but that they didn't say, and they just don't leave it as it is, and sometimes what you said isn't really what you said, and now the context of the conversation is different because they only included certain things, or they didn't include entire quotes of yours or something like that. I mean, that's a really long-winded thing to say about the news again, but it's just like being so close to the Aziz situation and seeing what happened and being there, interacting with his management, his team, and then seeing the way that the internet responded to it. There were so many people that want to respond positively to it and did respond positively to it. Like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're not letting people keep you down, Aziz. Like, we're so glad to see you back, and hopefully we get that next season, Master and None. That's what everybody was saying. And I feel like if, CNN or somebody would write a responsible article about, like, hey, go on Twitter and look at the Instagram comments and read them, call and do your own research. Like, find out, how about reporting that there was 10 shows that he did instead of one show, and making it sound like he did a stand-up set on Monday night and that the power went out for his one show. Like, people all around the country that are they're not going to be privy to the information that he sold out 10 shows. Sold out 10 shows, meaning that 300 people 10 times wanted to see him and paid a lot of money to go do it and really enjoyed themselves, and nobody had a bad time except for 2 people at 2 different shows that got kicked out because they got up and started yelling and because they were really drunk. And that's about it, So if they would have done their research and they would have tried to figure out what was going on, the conversation they presented, that wouldn't have been on the table. It wouldn't have been the thing that was said. The dude kind of came out and threw down for all those fans, all those shows, and it's, the same hour, but he did it just as well, and he improved it, and he changed things out. Just so impressive to watch. And again, like, the whole thing about it was he's working on new material, and they don't want to give any of it away, which I definitely will not do, but I'll just gotta say it again, dude. Aziz, I've seen so many comedians lately. I've seen so many headliners. The dude was a killer. He would have killed any room. Doesn't matter if they were there to see him or not. He was hilarious. And like I said, dude, I hate, especially right now when, like, politics are so ridiculous that the Onion News can't even keep up. Like, the Onion is about to go out of business because it can't be funnier than reality. So, like, I remember when Trump got elected, people were like, oh, man, it's going to be like George Bush times 1,000. When George Bush was president, it was just like a gold mine of material, just endless. But it's just so overwhelming that I don't want to hear about it when I'm at a comedy show. Like, I find myself, I won't say the name of the comedian, but there was a headliner there just the other day that their entire set, and they're a great headliner that I've loved for many years, but their entire set was political. And I left the room and didn't watch it because I wasn't enjoying the content of the show at all. I just don't want to hear about that shit. But Aziz the social commentary, like, it wasn't political so much, but it was, I mean, everything is kind of political these days if you think about it, but it was just, man, pretty much spot on social commentary, the way that he talked about everything, his perspective on everything. He's definitely very intelligent, very well thought out, and just obviously a cerebral comic. You know, he just showed so much respect for every joke. Like, he took no time off of any second of any bit at all, and every joke was meant to be, none of them were throwaways, none of them were trash, none of them were easy or cheap laughs. They were all worked up, great premises, and relatable to him, but relatable to everybody else. It was one of those sets where it's like the whole time it's like, oh man, I feel like I've already thought of that. I feel like you're just kind of relaying to me what I think. And the crazy thing to me is that I didn't know, I mean, I guess he's been doing stand-up for a while. He's obviously a very well-achieved comedic actor. But he's, I guess he's not like a super experienced stand-up, and he's not like a stand-up. Like, from what I can tell, he doesn't know a ton about the stand-up world. He doesn't know about the club circuit, but the dude is a complete natural up there. It's not like any other actor or anybody I've seen that's like, that's primarily their thing, and they'll come in and they'll do some stand-up. I mean, the dude could have been any high caliber great headliner stand-up. I mean, better than them. You know, I mean, he's up at the top of the heap for sure right now. Incredible. Really, 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 really good shows. I could talk about the Aziz shows the entire time, to be honest with you. That's how much I enjoyed them. But yeah, man, don't let the story from a year ago, you know, I mean, it's not going to ruin his career. Fuck it. I mean, he's coming back. He is coming back. And no one's going to stop it, and it's just going to happen. And I think it's necessary because, you know, anybody else that's been, you know, kind of had their career put on hold and had their reputation kind of crucified in the media over smaller things like this, I feel like it's really necessary for somebody like Aziz to come back out and just come out and throw down, and for people to love him for what he's doing. I think it's really important because you got to show the weird thing about this shit right now is that I don't even care about what people think, because there's so many fucking people in the world that have always thought so many things. And if you're not close, I mean, it just goes to show, like I've said about being in Nashville at the shows, if you weren't there, you kind of don't know what happened, because there's no way, unless you read that Tennessean article, that was the most representative of what actually happened at the shows, is pretty accurate. But anything else, any of these major news outlets, if you're anywhere in the country and you saw something from the New Yorker or the New York Post, I mean, you're just not going to get the honest information. You're not going to be able to form a valid opinion because you don't know the truth. And that's everybody around the world with, like, all news. I mean, you got to think, that's really kind of what it's been showing me lately, all these stories that are like this, is that how can you really know if you aren't close to the situation, if you didn't talk to the people involved, if you weren't, like, you can't just read an article by some outlet and achieve their purpose in their writing, like you've absorbed their opinion and now you know. I mean, you just can't know. So I mean, it's really helped me reserve my opinion or care about reading more and finding more information, kind of breaking down articles more. But I think it's really important for somebody like him to come out and do this, man, because just corporations will just fucking dog you, know, like companies that you work for. What am I trying to say here? Like, corporations don't have any fucking balls anymore to stand up to anything. You know, anybody that's a sponsor. I know I saw something recently that was like a Major League Baseball player. I think it was a baseball player. His dad said something. No, maybe he was a quarterback. I can't remember. Nonetheless, he was a professional athlete. But he said something. His dad said something racist when he was like not even born or was like 6 years old, like some racial thing. And some sponsor came out and dropped him for something his dad said when he was a child or not even born, you know? And just like, I mean, that's a super extreme thing, and I obviously am kind of talking out of my ass about that specifically because I don't even know the details of it. But the fact that people are so intimidated, like companies are so like, oh my God, they're going to protest us and we're going to get the bad name and blah, 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 that they have no balls to stand up for the people that they've invested in. For, like, just go, hey, maybe fuck you, Like, Comedy Central is weird about it, but they're kind of okay sometimes. Like, I know with this TJ Miller stuff, and I've had this conversation about TJ Miller with some people. I guess I don't understand the details of his stuff, because I met TJ Miller not that long ago, and we hung out a little bit, and he was really, really nice to me, and we got along, had good conversation. He talked to me about clubs and his tour, and he'd been traveling a lot, and really nice guy. And nonetheless, I don't really know anything about his thing, but I do know that he had a show on Comedy Central, and it got canceled, and then 6 months later this stuff came out, and then people started writing articles like TJ Miller's Comedy Central show canceled after allegations of blah 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 blah, and then Comedy Central actually did come out and kind of put themselves on the line. They were like, hey, yeah, the show's canceled, but we canceled it 6 months ago, and it was just canceled because we wanted to cancel it. Like, it wasn't because of this. Like, we didn't, don't get it twisted, pretty much. Like, it wasn't because of the... Now, Comedy Central isn't obviously the most moral towards stand-up comedians all the time. You look at somebody like, what they did to, like, Ari Shaffir and his show, and fucking taking that shit away from him, and just other things, And since the Chappelle show, and, like, they've had a short list of really successful TV shows, I think. They're just kind of bouncing through. They'll get 1-2 seasons in of a show with a comedian, and then it doesn't get traction for one reason or another. Maybe that's the company, who knows. But Comedy Central seems like they at least try to stand up for it a little bit. They're not going to be, like, intimidated into firing somebody. Like, I just wish that more companies would be like that, because it's only going to get worse, moving forward. And I feel like it's going to move into, of course it's going to exist with celebrities, because that's where money is. If you're giving out sponsorships, or they're the face or something, you're hiring them. It's like, why do you hire Brad Pitt? You hire Brad Pitt to be in your movie because people are going to see Brad Pitt's face, and that's marketing. Like, you're paying Brad Pitt, like, $13 million to do a movie, not just for his acting skills, and not just for the money that you'll make on the movie, so it makes sense that him as the lead would get paid a lot of money. It's also because his face brings with it fans. Like, if people see that Brad Pitt's going to be in the movie, more people will go see it. So, like, these companies, that's what they're using these comedians or other, social figures as. And when they get intimidated, just the sign of the times with all this, with the Me Too accusations and Me Too movement, the protests came out so strong up front, and the social activism is shown so strong in the last couple years, that people just get so scared that they're going to lose profit margin. They're going to lose money, so they just cut somebody off and cut off their money and cut off their opportunity. And that's the other thing about it, is it's super damning, and it feeds the fire in the media when they lose their gig. If you stood up, if these, and I'm not talking about, like, I don't know if CK stuff is still on Netflix. I know it was for a while. I know he has a website. You can get all his shit on his website. I watched his movie I Love You Daddy. It was on YouTube, which I thought it was a great movie. A lot of people, I guess, thought it was shitty, but I really liked it. It took a while to get into it. But I'm not saying, like, everybody should be stood up for, obviously. Like, I don't know who Bill Cosby was working for, but stand up for that guy, obviously. But certain people like Hardwick, who obviously they did their independent investigation, they gave him all his gigs back, but he created the Nerdist. He is the Nerdist, and it became this like thing. It's like a publication, it's like a company, and he was like fired from his own thing pretty much. Like, he is the Nerdist. That's him. And they took that away from him. They took all his AMC shows away. They took At Midnight away. He has podcast. Chris Hardwick was everywhere, and people love him. And he didn't do anything wrong. He obviously didn't do anything, well, maybe not wrong, but, and this is the other thing. I don't even want to talk about these current events and this news shit, because people are so, they don't understand. A kid in high school told me this once, and until recently I didn't really understand what it meant, even though I'd participate in the conversation. It said, morals are relative. Right and wrong are relative concepts. There's no way to really lock that down. Now, and I used to combat that, like devil's advocate, with like, no, there is a pretty clear-cut right and wrong. There is the right thing to do. There's the wrong thing to do. If you look into yourself, you reach into yourself, you do know the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. But maybe that's just like personal interaction with yourself and what you do. But also, like, you think about, what about, do you give any money to any companies that do anything negative? If you're a girl, do you buy makeup from people that test on animals? Do you buy food that's not produced in a sustainable manner? Buy food that's like cruelty towards the animals, where the livestock are raised in horrible conditions? What about like supporting companies that exploit cheap labor overseas? What about Nike? How many of us are wearing Nikes? What about, we all get it all turned up on Nike hiring Kaepernick to be in their ad campaign, but also like they're paying for real cheap production all across the world for their products, so you can want to jump on the moral right train, but nobody lives their life, almost nobody lives their life in a way where they're like morally superior to anybody, where they have like some true moral high ground. People's morals are relative. Like if you are going to the grocery store and just buying whatever's on the shelves, like your money is fueling a process that you don't know, that you're not aware of. It could be negative, it could be wrong, it could be destructive, it could be harmful. And you could do that with any action that you do. Like, what about driving your car around? What about driving a gasoline-powered car? I mean, there's so many things that we all do that could be like, it's a relative right or wrong. None of us have the moral high ground, But we just lately have become overcome by these emotions, And some of us are just too caught up in it. I don't think we're thinking deep to the roots of our emotions. Thinking of, why do we care? You care about a person that's been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted because they're a human being, because they're a woman, and that shouldn't happen to them, of course. And that's why you care about it, right? But why is it only celebrity cases? You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody is just blowing up every sexual assault case. Nobody's like, oh, this girl in this area, because that would be, and excuse me if this is wrong, because I might be wrong, but I know I have been close to people that have been sexually assaulted. I know two girls really well that have been victims of sexual assault, and not like some fucking like rape, dude. Like, have been raped for real. And I know that's dark, but they don't want to bring that shit up really at all. It makes, like, they didn't press charges. They didn't seek to really press charges. They tried to really kind of find out what happened, and when things didn't go well, they kind of shut it down, and we're just like, well, it's not going to change anything, and I don't know, it's just going to elongate this process, and they were kind of ashamed, and I don't want to say I'm lucky they shared that with me, but I'm kind of thankful in a way that I'm friends enough with these two different people that they did share that information with me, because the way they really gave me that, that's a true insider perspective to that situation, that they were like, it was a real personal thing for them, that they had to go through it. And then they would always think about that there's somebody else out there that was a part of it too, and that they're not going through it at all. And that was most of the battle for them. And that was it. Now, when you see sexual assault, and it's always a story with celebrities, and it comes out, and the person wants to come, and this isn't a victim blaming or anything, or it just makes me think, when I'm thinking down to the root of something, like, I know these people, and I know people that have been through it, and when it doesn't involve any status or any celebrity, there's no attention. Like, you can't get attention to the story off the person who wronged you's name, right? Because nobody knows who they are. Like, CNN's not going to pick up Joe Schmo and his story and your account of the sexual assault, because they can't get clicks and media and money off of your advertising headline. That's why they're not reporting it. That's why they report the celebrity stuff. But on the other hand, it makes me think, why do they come out in the news and just like lay it all out there, because all these stories that we know about, like Aziz Ansari, Louis C.K., Chris Hardwick, James Franco, T.J. Miller. I mean, there's all these different cases, and it's like the people came out and firsthand account some way or another gave information to media about it. And I just wonder how the fame or the other person's status, what it is about that makes them want to speak to the media. Is it that same thing maybe? Is it that this person did this to me and they're out there and it doesn't affect them? And they actually do have the avenue. They're like, oh, if I spoke up, people care, and that's like, it would get picked up in the media and they will talk about it. Like, maybe that is the right thing almost. But if it's not every time, see, I just don't know. It's just a confusing thing. And I'm not a woman, and you don't even, that's the other thing. I hate that you even have to say that. I don't think you have to be a woman necessarily to understand. Like, you could be a man and be fucking sexually assaulted, and if you were, you probably would very well understand the issue. You know, it's just less common. And it's just obviously something people care about. And in one way or another, I'm close to it on different ends of things. So, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I definitely don't want to write it off and be like, oh, just like let them come back and do their comedy. I mean, that's definitely not what I think. But it was just, I guess this all just came out of the Aziz thing, man. Man, this podcast is brought to you by smoking weed and my fever. I'm in here sweating, boy. I got the air conditioner off just for you guys, so you don't have to hear that in the mic. So I'm in here. It's 95 degrees outside, and it's probably 80 degrees in the apartment. I got that fever. I'm sweating it out. What else, man? What else have I been doing? I didn't think I'd talk about that for that long. I just kind of wanted to talk about Theo and talk about Aziz and those shows. But you never really know where you're going with these podcast things. You never really know what you're going to say. Let's see, what else have I been doing? Last time I talked about a book I was reading. Let's switch gears a little bit. While we're switching gears, I'll probably edit this out, but I'm going to smoke a little. You'll hear it. Yeah. All right. So, I've been reading Lord of the Flies. I've also been reading No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. Fucking unbelievable book, man. It's obviously like I think it came out in 2011, the movie, or maybe later, 2014. That's how I kind of got turned on to it. I rented the movie online and watched it, and it was unbelievable. And I watched it 2 times a day for probably 3 days. I watched it 3 days in a row, twice a day. And it's just an incredible, like, okay, so if you haven't read the book, watch the movie first. That's what I recommend. A lot of people don't say that shit. But either way you do it, the movie or the character, the movie was done by the Coen brothers. If you're not familiar with the Coen brothers, they're these brothers that are directors and screenwriters, and this is the first movie they've ever directed that they didn't write the screenplay themselves. Like, they didn't write the source material. Everything else, like The Big Lebowski, Fargo, they've done just so many great movies, and they just have this style that I really enjoy, where it's almost like, in the same way that actually in Lord of the Flies I was talking about enjoying, they kind of set you up without context. Like at the beginning of No Country for Old Men, in the book and the movie, it's like a speech by the Tommy Lee Jones character, which is Sheriff Bell, and he's talking about, in the book it's more in depth, and I kind of see why they edited it the way they did for the movie, which is why the Coen brothers are fucking geniuses. They take one of the most genius works of literature, and the way it's written and the qualities of the characters in the books, and they adapted it to be even better, where I don't think it could have been more perfect than it was. It's just an unbelievable movie. But the Sheriff Bell character starts the movie, it's like a monologue, he's off screen, and it's just showing the landscape of Texas, and he's talking about how he's been a sheriff for a long time, and it's kind of introducing you to the theme of the title, which is No Country for Old Men. It takes place in like Texas in 1980, and it's how the world was just evolving in America and all over the world for just like the old way of people not locking their doors and just waving at everybody and everybody knowing each other's names and nothing being dangerous and just everybody being good people, small world kind of thing. That concept was going away, that you can't trust your kids to play outside, or you can't leave the door unlocked. People just killing each other, senseless crimes that you've never seen, that don't make any sense. So that's just pretty much his monologue, and he talks about he had to send a man to the electric chair, and he kind of recaps the encounter, what the man said to him, that the guy knew he was going to hell and he'd be there in 15 minutes. And then as they're doing that, they're showing you a deputy arresting a guy and leading him and putting him in a car, and he's putting a narrative. It's just fucking great, dude. This is a problem of mine. I have a great memory with movies, and I can shot for shot pretty much recap an entire movie to somebody out of my memory. And God bless my sister growing up with me. I would watch a movie, and then she just wouldn't stop me, and I would pretty much get through 3/4 of the movie describing all the dialogue and all the scenes before she'd be like, hey, I'm probably not going to be able to watch the movie now. It's not going to be as enjoyable, and I'd rather just not hear the rest of the story. But just the filmmaking is great. The way that they use the way they achieve the text in the movie, they definitely change some things, and the characters kind of take on a different life in each medium. In the movie, the characters are a little bit different. They what's interesting is they start the same pretty much, but the extra detail of the book is almost a little too flawed for the screen, and I think that's why the Coen brothers did what they did. What's really interesting is the villain character. There's a lot of different, it kind of focuses on 3 storylines: Sheriff Bell, and then there's Anton Chigurh, who is the villain type character, and then there is Llewellyn Moss, who is kind of your hero character. And the roles are just they're not traditional roles in a Shakespeare. Shakespeare really affected the way that roles are played, and the way that people write. I mean, the Shakespearean model of antagonist and protagonist and tragedy and comedy and just all that shit. I mean, it is still unbelievably affecting today. That's the kind of the blueprint. And the Coen brothers just the way they warp it a little bit is just really interesting to me. And it's all their movies that I've seen are just movies that I want to watch over and over, and I want to break them down and analyze them almost like a book, But the Anton Chigurh character is really interesting because in the book they don't really physically describe him at all. They don't really talk about his clothes very much. They don't talk about his height or his stature or his hair. Really, one of the only things they talk about in the book is that he has these ice blue eyes, these cold blue eyes. And in the movie, he's played by what's that guy's name? Fucking Javier something. Javier Bardem is his name. And that dude is an incredible actor. I don't know if I've ever seen a person I don't know if I've Doc Holliday in Tombstone might be one of the only other roles that stands up against this guy's role. I mean, he's just an unbelievable character. His accent is crazy. Part of me thinks it's crazy because he's a Brazilian guy or I forget where he's from, Portugal or something, and he's got a super heavy, a Spanish type accent, and they wanted him to obviously not be Spanish, but his accent is just crazy in the movie, and it just I don't know if that's the intention. In the book, you obviously wouldn't know if he has an accent like that or something, but in the movie, it's kind of perfect because something that does come from the book, and I watched a bunch of stuff with the Coen brothers. There's not a bunch of stuff of them talking about anything, but I watched what I could find about them talking about it. And Chigurh, the reason Cormac used that name is because it's I think it's Japanese, but it was really hard to trace of any origin or any meaning. So his nationality, and it wasn't really easy to assume what that was per reading the book. Anton Chigurh you just really wouldn't know. There were no details that really would give you any information to determine what the guy might be like or what he would look like. So that really gave them, I guess, in the movie a lot of freedom to do what they wanted to do with the character. And the motherfucker threw down and he killed it. I mean, I would love to be on a Coen Brothers set and just see... Because what they do is they kill it in casting. Like, a Coen Brothers movie is completely achieved pretty much through casting. And then the shots, and then they just get great shots. And then the actors do what they do, and that's it. And they even... The casting affects... the casting affects the movie because they allow the actors to have a lot of influence on the roles. Like, there's Josh Brolin did a podcast with Mark Maron, Mark Maron's podcast, and it was really, really good. He talked about a whole bunch of really good, interesting things, but they talked a little bit about working with the Coen Brothers, and there's a scene that's really cool. Well, Josh Brolin talks about there's an actor, or not an actor, I think it's just a guy that he knew that he was like, this is what this character would be like, and he would kind of act like he wouldn't do anything that wasn't like what he knew this guy, and he was like, if this guy wouldn't do this, my character wouldn't do this. So there was something that there's a scene where the Coen Brothers wrote him and his woman, whose name I can't remember right now, but they're sitting on the couch, like, looking at each other, talking after he's found the money out in the desert, and she's talking about being worried for his safety and stuff, and he's like, well, he wouldn't do that, you know? That's not how they would talk to each other. They wouldn't look at each other. They would just sit down on the couch, just look at the TV, not looking at each other, popping open a beer, like, not taking it that seriously, kind of jabbing at each other. And that scene is great. And it also, like, I don't know, it just fits the aesthetic of the movie a lot better, because then there are other scenes in the movie where they film Sheriff Bell sitting on the same couch, facing the television, looking at the TV. They show Shagor sitting on the same couch, looking at the TV by himself. So it kind of added, I don't know if they intended for that, but it just, like, they try to tie these three characters' stories together, even though they're pretty much entirely separated the entire movie. You don't really see either of them together in any shot, any of the three of them in the whole movie. And even in the beginning, like, the symbolism in the... See, this is why I love good fucking movies, and probably none of you give a fuck about this, but at the beginning, in the monologue with Tommy Lee Jones, Sheriff Bell's character, they show these three compasses. They're like windmills or whatever, and the first one is a windmill, and it's broken, like it's not working at all. It's just sitting there. And then the next one, it's got the compass on the back, and it's working, and it's turning with the breeze. And then the next one, it's got no compass at all, but it's spinning really fast, and it's working. So what the kind of the symbolism of those is, like, the broken one that doesn't work is like the Tommy Lee Jones character, because it's I mean, you don't need me to fucking break it down like a poet or something. I mean, he's just older, and he's not adapting to the times, and it's just not... That's just what it is, you know? And then that's so fucking dumb what I just said. The Josh Brolin character is the one that works and turns with the breeze. The whole point of the compass thing, though, is the Anton Chigurh character, and there's dialogue throughout the movie that makes you understand that later. It's almost like a weird... It's not foreshadowing because it doesn't tell you anything, but it kind of does. There's something that Anton Chigurh says to the Woody Harrelson character, and he says, if the rule that you follow brought you here, of what use was the rule? And he's about to fucking cap him, like, he's about to kill him, and he's saying that, like, you follow a set of rules, a set, like, in life, and if you take that shit so seriously and they brought you to this point, then why did you do it at all the whole time? And what you're kind of left to interpret from that is, that's later on in the movie, is that the Chigurh character is just out there living random life, just doing what he feels. He's out there what he does is, like, he'll be killing people on a coin toss. Like, he'll flip the coin and you call it, and if you get it wrong, he kills you. Just like if he feels, he just gets some inclination that maybe he should kill you. And if he does, he either will just kill you, or he'll be like, he'll do the coin toss thing to decide if you should live or die, because he feels like at that moment, so he's the compass with no direction. He feels like in life that he has been set at that point to be that guy, to make that decision, and he's going to flip that coin to decide if you live or die. And if you call the coin and you get to live, then that was it. And that was the right thing. But if not, then that was the thing that should happen, and he should take you out in that moment. You don't deserve to live. Like, and somehow he's got this crazy way of operating and set of morals and standards that make him succeed over everyone else. He never fails. Even if he gets shot, even if he gets fucked up, he ends up getting out okay. Like, traditional villain characters don't do that, you know? So he's the compass with no direction, and he works the best. You know, that's what you're left to interpret. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but this shit doesn't work out great for everybody. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. But yeah, I mean, just a crazy, interesting movie. But the book, I haven't, gotten through the entire thing yet. I've gotten through a big part of it, and I'm reading too many books at once right now. But man, Cormac McCarthy, I can't wait to check out more of his books. I looked him up, and he wrote this book called The Road, which was a Pulitzer-winning. He won Pulitzer Prize for The Road, and I think they made that into a movie, and I might have actually seen it. But yeah, man, Cormac McCarthy, really interesting writing style. He doesn't use a lot of punctuation. He doesn't use any quotes. Like, so the way he writes isn't like a stream of consciousness kind of thing, but you don't really ever get confused about who is speaking. He doesn't say Bell said this and Llewellyn said that. He just kind of like, you just kind of figure it out. Like, you just know, you just know who's talking. It's really interesting because it just throws all the rules of writing as you would know them out the window. Like, all the systems that people have developed to let you know, like, oh, this is when this person's talking, and all these literary techniques. He just doesn't give a fuck. Cormac's like, I'm just writing the book. Fuck you. Which is awesome. I think that's really cool. Also, something I'm curious about and I haven't figured out yet is, I know in the movie, at the end of the towards the end of the movie, the Tommy Lee Jones character, Sheriff Bell, goes and meets with some random dude in a wheelchair out in a shack that he knows somehow. And I'm wondering if that guy is like the narrator, because in the movie he's just in there for a minute and he knows him, and it seems like he just kind of is there to expose some of the emotion, like the interior of Sheriff Bell. But he just, other than that, you don't really learn anything about the guy other than he wasn't, maybe he aspired to be a sheriff and he was going to work under Sheriff Bell's father, who was a sheriff, and his grandfather was a sheriff. But he was shot and paralyzed. And then they talk about that they're going to put the guy to death, or that they were about to let him out of jail or something. And there's just this thing where the guy gets real serious about that he can't hold on to hate towards the guy that shot. It's just weird. Like, it's kind of a weird, like, I don't understand really why that scene's in the movie, and it doesn't fuck. I just really only thought about it, but like, that guy seems like he might be like the narrator, and the way Cormac is, there probably isn't like a narrator. It's just like, you gotta read it, you gotta check him out, because just his style of writing is really different than anything else. And it's just definitely worth reading. Motherfucker's a badass. What else, man? We've done an hour and 17 minutes. Pretty good. See, anything else? What else? Oh yeah, I got that fever. I've been out for 2 days on this fever. Last night I fell asleep with a bunch of blankets on, and my fever broke in my sleep. and I had a dream. I was like hallucinating. I also I took some Alpha Brain before I went to sleep, which probably didn't help. I think that turned his shout out to Onnit and Alpha Brain. Yeah, I took some Alpha Brain, and then my fever broke in my sleep, and I started having hallucinogenic dreams, and I woke up in a panic, and I just felt hot and cold all day. I felt like shit, so I took a little acetaminophen. I feel a little better. I mean, the funniest thing was that I only woke up from the dream because I was peeing in the dream, right? I don't even remember. Because of this, I don't even remember. The dream was... I think I was like dying and coming back to life, and it was just really weird. But at one point I was peeing in the dream, and I'd been peeing for a long time, and then all of a sudden something clicked, and I was like, oh, dude, you're peeing right now. In real life, you're peeing. And I woke up, and when I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. My shorts, my shirt, dude, everything was covered in sweat, so I just, like, for sure thought I peed. And so I threw the blanket off me, and I'm like feeling the couch, and the couch wasn't wet, and the blanket wasn't wet, and I go in the bathroom, I'm like taking off my fucking clothes and looking at them. I'm like trying to smell my clothes at a distance to see if I peed on them. I totally didn't. I didn't pee, but damn, dude, it scared the shit out of me, and I had to jump in the shower. I took like a cold shower, and then I was just hot and cold, and I took a nap. I had to fucking call into work tonight, so having a little shitty time. I don't feel great. I'm not very hungry. I might try to go get a little chicken noodle soup or something in my life. A little orange Gatorade. But yeah, man, here soon. The last podcast I think I did on September 6th, and I might still release it. I think I'm going to edit these a little bit. But, man, hopefully you're out there listening. If you want to like, subscribe, or whatever. But I'm pretty much just doing this. I just want to get something going, man. If you're out there, if you're a friend of mine, a musician, a comedian, you want to be on the podcast, you want to hang out, do something, man, let me know. Reach out to me. We'll plan something out. We'll try to do something. Even if we end up hanging out and just shooting the shit, and it's just a bunch of bullshit and we scrap it. Like, well, whatever. Fuck it. We'll do it. So, yeah, man, this is live from the Tracking Room, episode 2. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll get you guys next time.
Dropping names like a coin pop lock machine. Running down the aisle like to drink your gasoline. I'm getting tired, skip a hotel and sleep. My impossible sleeper, heart palpitation seeker.